The moment someone questions your decision and you start explaining your reasoning, you have just handed them your power on a silver platter. Picture this scenario. You're in a meeting. You propose a new strategy. Someone at the table leans back, crosses their arms and says, "That doesn't make sense. Why would we do it that way?" Your chest tightens. Your heartbeat accelerates. Your mind scrambles to build a fortress of justification. So you launch into it. You explain your research, your logic, your past successes with similar approaches. You're being thorough. You're being transparent. You think you're being professional. But what you've actually done is accept their authority to question you in the first place. You've entered a courtroom where they are the judge and you are the defendant. And in that exact moment, regardless of how good your explanation is, you have already lost the psychological battle for dominance. Because authority doesn't explain, authority decides. And the moment you break that frame, you signal to everyone watching that you need permission to exist. So why do we do this? Why is your first instinct when challenged to open your mouth and defend your position? It starts before you can even remember. You're 4 years old. You take a cookie before dinner. Your parent sees you. "Why did you do that?" they demand. And in that moment, you learn a crucial survival equation. Authority figure questions me. Plus, I provide acceptable explanation. I avoid punishment. You did it again at 6, at 8, at 12. Teacher questions your homework. You explain. Boss questions your approach. You justify. Partner questions your motives. You defend. The pattern became hardwired. When someone with perceived power challenges you, you must build a logical case for why you deserve to not be punished. It kept you safe as a child. It kept you fed, sheltered, accepted. But here's the problem. You're not a child anymore. Yet you're still running that same primitive software. You're projecting parental authority onto everyone you meet. Your colleague, your client, the stranger on social media, even people who have no actual power over you. Niccolo Machiavelli understood something in the 1500s that most people still don't understand today. Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are. He knew that perceived authority matters infinitely more than actual competence. And the fastest way to destroy perceived authority is to act like you need someone else's approval. When you explain yourself, you're saying, "Please understand me so I can feel safe." When you refuse to explain, you're saying, "I am safe regardless of whether you understand me or not." One is the psychology of a subordinate. The other is the psychology of a sovereign. Here's what you need to understand about power dynamics. The courtroom only exists if you walk into it. When someone questions your decision, they're not really asking for information. They're testing whether you believe you owe them an explanation. It's a probe, a psychological scan to determine your position in the hierarchy. Think about it. When a CEO makes a decision, does the intern get to say, "Why did you do it that way?" and expect a detailed breakdown? No. The question itself would be inappropriate because everyone understands the power structure. But when you're building authority, when you're in that ambiguous middle zone, people will test you constantly. And every time you explain, you're sending a signal. I accept your right to audit my decisions. I accept that my choices require your validation. This is why middle managers explain everything and executives explain nothing. It's not that executives are smarter or more secure. It's that they understand the game being played. Carl Jung said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But you cannot become who you truly are while you're constantly performing for an invisible jury. Every explanation is a performance. Every justification is a plea for approval. And here's the biological mechanism at play. When you're questioned, your amygdala interprets it as a threat. Your body floods with cortisol. Your nervous system screams, "Defend yourself or die." This is ancient tribal programming. In our evolutionary past, being questioned by the group meant potential exile. Exile meant death. So your brain does what it's been trained to do: seek safety through explanation. But in the modern world of status games and social hierarchies, that defensive crouch is exactly what strips you of authority. So what do you do instead? When someone questions your decision, when they demand an explanation, when they're clearly waiting for you to justify yourself, you do nothing. Let me show you what this looks like. Someone says, "I don't understand why you're taking this approach. It seems risky." The old you would say, "Well, actually, if you look at the data from last quarter and consider the market trends, you'll see that this is actually the safest option." Because defensive, eager, weak, the Machiavellian approach. You look at them. You hold their gaze for 2, 3, 4 seconds. Your face remains completely neutral, not angry, not defensive, just present. Then you say, "Noted," and you move on. That's it. Nothing more. What have you just done? You've created a psychological vacuum. The human brain cannot tolerate silence during a challenge. Silence suggests rupture. It suggests you're not playing by the expected social rules. It makes people deeply uncomfortable because they can't categorize you. In that silence, they're sitting with their own challenge. They threw a ball at you expecting you to catch it and throw it back. Instead, you let it drop. You refused to play catch. And here's what happens next, in about 70% of cases. They explain themselves. I mean, I'm not saying it's wrong. I just wanted to understand the thinking. Now they're defending why they questioned you in the first place. The power has flipped without you saying a single defensive word. This is weaponized indifference. Not because you don't care about your decision, but because you don't need their comprehension to validate it. A king does not pause his procession to explain to a commoner why he chose that particular route to the castle. Sometimes silence isn't appropriate for the context. Sometimes you're in a situation where saying nothing would be socially unworkable. That's when you use the Aikido technique. In martial arts, Aikido is about using your opponent's force against them. They push, you pull. They expect resistance, you give flow. The same principle applies to psychological combat. When someone challenges you, they're expecting you to push back. They want resistance because resistance gives them something to fight against. Instead, you agree with a pattern interrupt that dismantles their entire frame. Here's the scenario. Your proposal is going to cost too much money. Defensive response. No, it won't. I've done the calculations, and if you factor in the ROI over 18 months, plus the efficiency gains. Aikido response. You're right. It's expensive. That's why it works. Stop. Let that sit. Do you see what happened? You agreed with the objection, which disarms the attack. Then you reframed the objection as the reason for your decision. Expensive isn't a bug, it's a feature. This creates massive cognitive dissonance in the challenger. They can't argue with you because you agreed with them, but you didn't concede anything. Or try this one. This strategy is too aggressive. Instead of defending how it's not aggressive, you say, "That's the point. Cautious didn't get us here." You've taken their weapon and used it as proof of your judgment. This requires tremendous confidence because you're not denying the accusation, you're owning it and recontextualizing it as intentional brilliance. This is what Machiavelli meant when he said, "Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand, for everyone can see and few can feel." People judge by appearance. When you appear unbothered by an accusation, even better. When you seem to embrace it, they assume it was strategic all along. Now we go deeper. There's a metastructure to every conversation. Every interaction has roles: questioner and questioned, challenger and defender, judge and defendant. Most people don't realize they have a choice about which role they play. When someone questions you, your default programming makes you accept the role of defendant. But that role is a trap. The advanced move is to simply refuse the role and hand it back to them. You do this by reflecting the question back as an observation about their psychology, them. Why are you being so difficult about this? Defensive you. I'm not being difficult. I'm just trying to make sure we do this right. And if you'd listen. Architect you. What makes you interpret clarity as difficulty? Boom. You just shifted the entire frame. Now we're not talking about whether you're being difficult. We're talking about their interpretation process. We're analyzing them, not defending you. Them. You're being unreasonable. Architect you. When you use words like unreasonable, what are you actually asking me to do? You've become the psychologist. They've become the patient on the couch. You're no longer defending your behavior. You're examining theirs. This is infuriating to someone who was trying to dominate you because they expected you to be reactive and defensive. Instead, you're curious and clinical. That's an interesting accusation. What do you think is driving your need to label me that way? You're not being cruel. You're not even being cold. You're simply refusing to accept their frame and instead treating their challenge as data about their internal state. This is the ultimate power move because it signals that you're operating from a completely different level of consciousness than they are. There's a concept in intelligence operations called need to know. You only share information with people who need it to accomplish their function. Everything else is restricted. Most people operate on the opposite principle in their daily lives. They think transparency equals trustworthiness. They think explaining everything makes them appear competent and collaborative. But in status hierarchies, the person with the most information has the most power. And when you explain everything, you're handing out your strategic information for free. Here are the verbal shields you use instead of explanations. Someone questions your approach. That's not something I'm discussing right now. Someone wants to know your reasoning. I'll share that when it's relevant. Someone demands justification. I've made the decision. Notice the pattern. You're not being rude. You're not being defensive. You're simply drawing a boundary around your decision-making process. You're saying, this is not open for debate. Robert Greene calls this Law 3 in the 48 Laws of Power. Conceal your intentions. But it's deeper than just concealing. It's about understanding that your reasoning, your fears, your doubts, your process, that's all yours. You don't owe it to anyone. When you explain, you reveal your values, your insecurities, your pressure points. I'm doing this because I'm worried about X. Now they know X is your weak spot. I chose this because I was concerned people would think Y. Now they know you care about Y's opinion. Strategic opacity keeps you unpredictable. And unpredictability is power, because it means people can't manipulate you. They don't know which buttons to push, because you haven't shown them where the buttons are. Now for the paradox. Everything I've just taught you about not explaining yourself has an exception. And understanding this exception is what separates tactics from mastery. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is admit a mistake completely and totally, without explanation or justification. But here's the key. You admit the action, not the character assassination. Someone says, "You completely screwed up that project. You're incompetent." Defensive response. I'm not incompetent. The data was incomplete, and the timeline was unrealistic, and if you had given me proper resources. Sovereign admission. You're right. The project had errors. I'll fix them. What did you just do? You agreed with the factual problem. The project had errors, but you completely ignored the character attack. You're incompetent. You didn't dignify it with a defense. You didn't engage with it at all. This is psychologically devastating to the attacker because they wanted a fight. They wanted you to defend your competence so they could list more examples of your failures. Instead, you took ownership of the mistake so quickly and calmly that they look hysterical for even bringing up incompetence. Only a competent person can admit mistakes this easily. Insecure people fight to the death over every tiny error because they think one mistake equals total worthlessness. Secure people say, "Yep, I miscalculated that. Moving on." Friedrich Nietzsche wrote, The individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe. When you can admit a factual error without accepting shame, you prove you're not overwhelmed by the tribe's judgment. You prove you have an internal compass that doesn't depend on never making mistakes. This creates grudging respect, even from your enemies, because it's so rare. Most people would rather die than admit they were wrong. When you do it easily, it signals unshakable internal stability. But here's what you need to understand. None of these techniques work if you're just performing them on the surface, while internally, you're still desperate for approval. If you use silence, but your eyes are darting around, your voice is shaking, your body language is screaming, "Please don't hurt me," the technique fails. If you agree and amplify, but your energy is defensive and wounded, people will see through it instantly. This is why the real work isn't in the techniques. It's in the internal architecture that supports them. Why does it hurt when someone questions you? Because they're touching a wound that already exists. If someone calls you incompetent and you feel rage, it's because part of you already fears you're incompetent. If someone calls you selfish and you feel compelled to defend yourself, it's because you haven't fully accepted that yes, sometimes you are selfish, and that's human. Jung called this the shadow, the parts of yourself you've disowned and projected into darkness. And here's the brutal truth. Any part of your shadow that you haven't integrated becomes a weapon someone else can use against you. If I tell you that you have blue skin right now, will you get angry? Will you defend yourself? No. You'll think I'm insane. You won't feel the need to explain that your skin isn't blue because you know with absolute certainty that it isn't. There's no wound there. But if I tell you you're a fraud and you immediately launch into your credentials and accomplishments, I know I've found the wound. I know that some part of you suspects it might be true. The ultimate defense isn't verbal. It's psychological integration. It's looking at your own darkness, your own capacity for selfishness, cruelty, incompetence, weakness, and saying, yes, I contain that. So does everyone else. It doesn't define me, but I don't deny it. When you've done that work, when you've accepted your full humanity, including the ugly parts, you become psychologically bulletproof. Not because you're perfect, because you're no longer hiding anything from yourself. You cannot shame someone who has already accepted themselves completely. You cannot expose someone who has nothing left to hide. This is sovereignty, not dominance, not arrogance. Sovereignty. So here's your challenge. For the next 10 days, you're going to run an experiment in your own life. The experiment is called No Explanations. Here are the rules. Rule 1. If you're late, say, I'm late. Don't give the reason. Not, traffic was bad. Not, my alarm didn't go off. Just, I'm late. Rule 2. If someone questions your decision, use one of the techniques we covered. Silence, Aikido agreement, the mirror, strategic opacity, but never explain. Rule 3. If you make a mistake, own it without justifying it. I was wrong is complete. I was wrong because of these 17 factors that were beyond my control is weak. This will be uncomfortable. Your nervous system will scream at you. Your childhood programming will tell you that you're being rude, that you're going to be punished, that people will reject you. Sit in that discomfort. That discomfort is your ego dying, and your ego death is the birth of your sovereignty. Watch what happens to the people around you. They'll be confused at first. Then they'll test you harder. Then, if you hold frame, something fascinating happens. They start treating you differently, with more respect, with more caution, with more curiosity. Because you've signaled that you're not playing the game everyone else is playing. You're not in the validation market. You're not checking the social scoreboard every 5 seconds to see if you're winning approval. You're just here, decided, whole, present. And that kind of presence is magnetic because it's so rare. This information isn't for everyone. It's for the part of you that's exhausted from performing. The part of you that's tired of twisting yourself into shapes to make other people comfortable. The part of you that knows you've been giving away power in tiny transactions your entire life, and you're ready to stop. If that resonates, you know what you need to do. But don't subscribe to this channel because I'm asking you to. Subscribe because you've made a decision that you're done being interrogated by people who have no authority over you. You're done explaining yourself to people whose understanding is none of your business. Welcome to the Psych Architect. Let's build the kind of psychological structure that most people are afraid to even look at.